Pull open a 1960 kitchen drawer, the one with the recipe cards in it, and you will find the exact same handful of dishes written over and over in different handwriting, mothers, grandmothers, and aunts, because Sunday dinner in this decade was not really a creative act. It was a ritual, repeated almost identically in millions of American homes at almost exactly the same hour, built around a small, trusted rotation of dishes that families leaned on week after week. There was no real question of what might be served. There was only the question of which specific version of the same handful of meals showed up on the table that particular Sunday. If you grew up in this decade, you already know exactly what I mean, and if you did not, stick around, because by the end of this list you are going to recognize this table even if you have never once sat at it yourself. So what actually landed on an American dinner table on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of the 1960s? Why did the same handful of dishes show up again and again in kitchens from coast to coast? And which single dish on this list was so completely standard that skipping it felt, to a lot of families, almost like skipping church itself? We are counting down 15 things Americans actually ate for Sunday dinner in the 1960s. And hey, if a dish on this list makes you smile because you can genuinely smell it in your memory right now, do me a favor and drop it in the comments when we get there. I read every single one of them. Number 15. The pot roast, slow cooked all morning while the family was at church. This was about as close to a universal Sunday tradition as American cooking got in this decade. A large cut of beef, chuck roast most commonly, browned quickly and then left to cook low and slow for hours in a covered pot with onions, carrots, and potatoes, timed specifically so it would be ready the moment the family walked back in the door from the morning service. The genius of the dish was exactly that timing. A mother could put it in the oven before leaving for church and come home to a meal that had essentially cooked itself, filling the whole house with a smell that told everyone dinner was close before they even took their coats off. If you remember walking into a house that smelled like this on a Sunday afternoon, you already know exactly what I am talking about. Number 14. Green bean casserole. And yes, it is exactly the one you are picturing. Campbell's introduced the recipe for cream of mushroom soup mixed with canned green beans and topped with crispy fried onions back in 1955, and by the 1960s it had become such a fixture of the American Sunday table that an entire generation genuinely believed it was a traditional family recipe rather than something printed on the back of a soup can. The dish represented something bigger than just the specific ingredients, a genuine cultural shift toward convenience cooking, where a home cook could produce something that felt homemade and comforting using almost entirely canned and packaged ingredients, in under an hour, with almost no real cooking skill required at all. Number 13. Jell-O salad, savory, not sweet, and often containing things that would genuinely surprise you. This is one of the strangest entries on this entire list to modern ears, but through the 1960s it was completely normal for a Sunday dinner table to feature a molded gelatin salad containing shredded carrots, celery, canned pineapple, or even cottage cheese, suspended in lime or lemon-flavored Jell-O and unmolded onto a lettuce leaf as a genuine side dish rather than a dessert. Home economics magazines of the era ran entire dedicated sections on gelatin mold recipes, and owning a proper decorative Jell-O mold was considered a genuinely useful kitchen investment for any woman hosting Sunday dinner regularly. If your grandmother had a specific ring-shaped mold sitting in a cabinet somewhere, you already know exactly what it was for. Number 12. Deviled eggs, sitting on their own dedicated serving plate. Nearly every household that hosted Sunday dinner regularly through this decade owned a specific piece of dishware built entirely for one purpose. A deviled egg plate with individual oval indentations molded right into the china, and no Sunday spread felt fully complete without it sitting somewhere on the table. The filling itself, egg yolk mashed with mayonnaise, mustard, and a light dusting of paprika on top, varied only slightly from household to household, but the presence of the dish itself was considered nearly mandatory, especially when extended family or guests beyond the immediate household were expected at the table. Number 11. Canned corn, heavily buttered, served plain and unadorned. Fresh vegetables were genuinely more of a summer luxury for a lot of American families in this decade, and canned corn, simply heated through and finished with a real pat of butter, showed up on Sunday tables constantly as the reliable, inexpensive vegetable side that required almost no effort and almost never failed to please. This was not viewed as a lesser choice the way it might be seen today, Canned vegetables were marketed heavily throughout the decade as a genuinely modern, time-saving convenience, and a can of corn sitting in the pantry represented real practical planning for a busy household managing a full week of meals on a fixed budget. Number 10. Rolls, from a can, popped open with that specific sound everyone from this era remembers instantly. Refrigerated canned biscuit and rolled dough had become genuinely widespread by the middle of this decade, and the distinctive pop of the cardboard tube opening became such a common kitchen sound on a Sunday morning that it is still instantly recognizable to anyone who grew up hearing it. These rolls, baked quickly right before dinner and served warm with butter, offered real convenience compared to the more labor-intensive yeast rolls some grandmothers still insisted on making entirely from scratch, and the two approaches, homemade versus canned, occasionally became a genuine point of quiet, friendly rivalry between different generations of women in the same extended family. Number 9. Mashed potatoes, made properly from real potatoes, not yet from a box for most families. While instant mashed potato flakes did exist by this decade, most Sunday dinner tables still featured potatoes boiled and mashed by hand with real butter and whole milk, considered enough of a Sunday-specific effort dish that using the instant version felt, to a lot of home cooks, like cutting a genuine corner on the one meal of the week where corners were not really supposed to be cut. A large bowl of mashed potatoes sitting at the center of the table, with a well of melted butter pooled in the middle, was such a consistent visual across American Sunday dinners in this decade that it became genuinely iconic shorthand for the entire meal itself in advertising and popular culture of the era. Number 8. Ambrosia salad, the fruit and marshmallow dessert that also somehow counted as a side dish. This dish occupied a genuinely strange, undefined place on the Sunday table, a mixture of canned mandarin oranges, canned pineapple, shredded coconut, miniature marshmallows, and sour cream or whipped topping, served cold and sometimes eaten alongside the main meal rather than strictly as dessert. The recipe varied constantly from household to household, with genuine debate over whether it belonged with sour cream or whipped cream, whether nuts belonged in it, and whether maraschino cherries were required or optional. Small variations that families genuinely took seriously and defended at the table. Comment below if your family's version had something in it that nobody else's did, because I guarantee somebody reading this is going to disagree with you. Number 7. Fried chicken, especially common across the South but genuinely widespread everywhere. While regional variation was real, fried chicken held a genuinely central place on Sunday tables across an enormous swath of the country in this decade. Prepared using techniques passed down directly through families, specific seasoning blends, specific frying temperatures, specific cast iron pans that had been used for this exact purpose for decades and were never washed with soap for fear of ruining their seasoning. This was frequently the dish that took the most real skill and the most real time on the entire table, and a family known for having a particularly good fried chicken recipe often built a genuine informal reputation around it within their own extended community. Number 6. Sweet tea or lemonade, made from scratch, no powdered mix in sight yet for most households. Through most of this decade, powdered drink mixes were becoming available but had not yet fully displaced the traditional homemade pitcher of sweet tea or fresh squeezed lemonade sitting on the Sunday table, steeped or squeezed that same morning and kept cold in the refrigerator until dinner. In Southern households specifically, the exact sweetness and steeping method of sweet tea was treated as a genuinely serious point of family pride, with real, sometimes heated disagreement over how much sugar belonged in it, and exactly how long the tea needed to steep. Number 5. Canned fruit cocktail, served in small individual glass dishes as a kind of pre-dinner or side course. Long before the main meal or sometimes alongside it, many Sunday tables featured small individual bowls of canned fruit cocktail, the diced peaches, pears, grapes, and cherries suspended in light syrup, served cold directly from the can with almost no preparation required. This dish represented, in a genuinely small way, the same broader shift toward convenience visible across the entire Sunday table, a dish that felt like a real course, with its own dedicated small dishware, while requiring essentially no actual cooking at all. Number 4. A specific relish tray, featuring pickles, olives, and celery sticks arranged carefully on its own dedicated dish. Nearly every Sunday dinner table in this decade featured a small, carefully arranged tray of cold vegetables and pickled items, typically dill pickle spears, green and black olives, and celery sticks, sometimes stuffed with cream cheese or peanut butter, served as a starter that guests could pick at while the main dishes finished cooking. Owning a specific divided relish dish, often glass or ceramic with distinct compartments for each item, was considered a genuine household essential for anyone hosting Sunday dinner regularly, and the specific arrangement of items within it followed patterns many households repeated so consistently it barely required conscious thought. Number 3. A congealed or layered salad involving cottage cheese and canned pineapple. Beyond the gelatin mold already mentioned, a genuinely distinct and separate tradition existed around simple layered or mixed salads built specifically around cottage cheese combined with canned pineapple chunks, sometimes with a few chopped nuts or a light dusting of cinnamon on top, served cold in a small individual dish as a genuinely standard side item. This combination, sweet fruit against tangy cottage cheese, represented a specific flavor pairing that dominated American home cooking through this entire decade in a way that has genuinely never quite returned to fashion since, even as nearly everything else on this list has experienced some form of modern nostalgic revival. Number 2. Homemade pie, usually apple or cherry, baked that same morning specifically for the meal. Dessert on a Sunday table in this decade almost always meant a real, homemade pie, baked from scratch that same morning or the evening before, with a crust made by hand using a specific family recipe and technique passed down through direct demonstration rather than a written card, since a lot of grandmothers in this era genuinely could not have written down their own exact pie crust method even if asked. The specific fruit varied by region and season, but the presence of an actual homemade pie, rather than anything store-bought, was treated as a genuine marker of a properly hosted Sunday dinner, the kind of detail that guests noticed and specifically complimented on their way out the door. If your family had a specific pie that was always, without exception, on the table, tell me what it was in the comments, because I am genuinely curious how many of you say the same thing. Number 1. The entire family actually sitting down together, at the same time, without a television on. This is not a specific dish, but it belongs at the very top of this list because it was, in many ways, the single most defining and now the single most vanished part of the entire Sunday dinner tradition of this decade. Sunday dinner in the 1960s meant every member of the household, and frequently extended family as well, sitting down together at a set table, at a fixed time, for a meal that typically lasted well over an hour, with genuinely minimal outside interruption, no television running in the next room, no separate schedules pulling different family members away at different times. This specific, dedicated block of shared time, built entirely around a meal, is the part of this entire tradition that has faded the most dramatically in the decades since, even as individual dishes from this same table have experienced real nostalgic revivals in modern American kitchens. 15 things, 15 small pieces of a table that once brought an entire household together at almost exactly the same hour, every single week, without much question or debate about whether it would happen. None of these dishes were fancy. None of them required real culinary skill in most cases. But together, on a Sunday afternoon, they built something that a lot of people did not fully appreciate until decades later, looking back, realizing just how rare that specific block of uninterrupted shared time has actually become. If this video brought back a genuine memory for you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who might enjoy remembering right alongside you. If your own family had a Sunday dinner tradition that looked something like this, tell us in the comments what was actually on your table, and whether any of these dishes are still being made in your own kitchen today. And if there was one specific dish, one that always showed up without fail, that never made this list, tell us what it was and who in your family made it best. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We have got a lot more of this kind of American nostalgia coming, and I would genuinely love to have you back for the next one.